You're listening to an African Elements top news story for April 2nd, 2025. Please visit our website at africanelements.org for more daily news. AL immunity denied in 2025. Police trial Decatur cop murder trial proceeds by Darius Spearman, African Elements. A judge has made a crucial decision in the case of former Decatur police officer Mac Marquette. He was involved in the fatal shooting of Stephen Perkins during a truck repossession attempt. Judge Charles Elliott ruled Marquette is not entitled to immunity. This means Marquette failed to convince the court he acted in self-defense when he shot Perkins. The core issue revolves around the officer's presence at Perkins' home. According to the ruling, officers lack the legal right to assist with the truck repossession without a court order. Alabama law requires judicial permission for such actions, often related to civil forfeitures. Without this order, their involvement was deemed improper. Consequently, this lack of authority undermined Marquette's claim to immunity protections typically afforded to public officials acting within their duties. Judge Elliott didn't stop at the lack of a court order. He also questioned the officers' behavior on the scene. The judge described the officers as likely trespassers. This strong language stems from how they approached the situation. Instead of maintaining a visible presence to keep the peace, they reportedly hid around the property. This secretive approach raised serious questions about their intent and adherence to standard police protocols. Furthermore, evidence showed no effort was made to contact Perkins before they entered his property in a concealed manner. There was also no documentation of any menacing investigation that might justify such tactics. Shockingly, during the immunity hearing, 2 officers admitted they knew about the legal restrictions against assisting repossessions without court orders. Despite this awareness, they proceeded, contributing to the judge's finding that their actions were outside the bounds of lawful police work. This disregard for procedure ultimately contributed to the fatal encounter. Marquette's claim of self-defense faced significant challenges during the hearing. A critical piece of evidence involved the timing of the shooting. Marquette fired his weapon just 1.4 seconds after commanding Perkins to get on the ground. Judge Elliott found this time frame insufficient. It allowed virtually no time for de-escalation or even to reasonably assess if Perkins posed an actual threat requiring deadly force. Moreover, Marquette's physical position during the encounter contradicted his assertion that he was clearly identifiable as a police officer. He was reportedly positioned behind the bed of the truck, visible only from the waist up. This detail cast doubt on whether Perkins could have immediately recognized him as law enforcement. Generally, self-defense claims by officers require proving the force used was objectively reasonable and necessary under the circumstances. The judge's ruling indicates Marquette failed to meet this burden at the immunity stage. The case highlights a confusing yet critical distinction in Alabama law. Police assistance with private matters like vehicle repossessions is legally restricted. It often requires judicial oversight, similar to procedures for civil forfeitures, where the state seizes property. Civil forfeitures generally need court orders to prevent arbitrary property seizure. Repossession is typically a private matter between a lender and borrower. Officers might be present to keep the peace during potentially volatile private disputes. However, actively assisting the repossession itself, especially without a court order, crosses a legal line. As mentioned, 2 officers involved admitted knowing these limitations. Hiding on the property, rather than simply observing from a distance, also contradicts the goal of peacekeeping. Instead, it suggests participation in the repossession attempt itself, an action likely outside their legal authority. When police officers are accused of wrongdoing, they can sometimes claim immunity. This legal protection shields public officials from liability in certain situations. Common types include qualified immunity at the federal level and state-specific protections. However, these protections are not absolute. They generally apply only when officers act within the scope of their lawful duties and authority. In Marquette's case, the judge found the officers likely acted outside this scope. By assisting a repossession without a court order and potentially trespassing, they may have forfeited their immunity claims. The judge expressed skepticism about the officers' reasons for being there. Significantly, this leaves key factual questions for a jury to decide. They will ultimately determine if Marquette was acting within his employment scope and met the officer standard of reasonable conduct. The murder trial is now set for June 9, 2025, although an appeal of the immunity ruling is possible. While the judge's ruling sheds light on the legal failings, significant gaps remain in the available information. Crucially, details about Stephen Perkins himself are missing from the provided sources. We lack basic demographic data, like his race, or any context about his background or perspective on the events leading up to the shooting. Understanding who Perkins was is vital for assessing potential systemic issues or racial disparities that often plague interactions between law enforcement and Black communities. Additionally, the specific justification the officers gave for their presence at Perkins' property isn't detailed in the reports. While we know they were there for a repossession assist, their exact stated reason upon arrival remains unclear. The sources also don't specify what de-escalation standards, if any, were applicable or required by the Decatur Police Department at the time. The 1.4-second time frame suggests a failure, but the official protocol is unstated. Finally, the exact charge Marquette faces is not explicitly mentioned. Consequently, these missing pieces make it harder to fully grasp the complete narrative and its implications for justice. Copyright African Elements.